If you've watched my previous video on magic talking about the development of the magic triangle, you would recall how light magic was amongst dark and anima in the various balancing acts of it in the series up until magic just became one big thing with no distinction through advantage or disadvantage over another. Light's place was rather unfortunate throughout compared to its peers though, where anima magic basically took over 90% of spells in the series starting after the GBA era, and dark magic became rarer yet still retaining its identity throughout Awakening and beyond, even needing a unique class or skill to be used. Light magic just kind of fell to the wayside. It didn't die though, because light magic has made its return in recent titles, but it's nowhere near as common, nor even as powerful as it once was. Today's video investigates the strong beginning to its mediocre middle, all the way to its current state in the series of just being kind of there. In the beginning, there was only magic. No distinction between light, dark, or anima. The closest thing in Fire Emblem 1 were personal tomes, Excalibur on Merrick and Aura on Lind. Of all the spells, you could argue Aura and Starlight were light magic, but the distinction didn't really work. Gaiden introduced a split of white magic and black magic, as well as different spell lists for clerics and mages. But black magic was just all the combat spells, and white magic was all non-combat. Spells like Nosferatu and Resier, or Seraphim and Angel, could be argued to be light, being the only combat spells clerics could learn. But again, the game had no strict limitation. Mystery of the Emblem was basically the same as FE1 in its distinction of magic, though Book 2 did introduce Nosferatu as a female-only tome, which was reminiscent of Gaiden's Nosferatu on clerics and was the first sign of a light magic trend. Genealogy of the Holy War split magic into 5 types, and this is where light magic truly hit its stride. Extremely rare and limited to only Priestess, Bard, Sage, and Master Knight classes, light was the most powerful magic type that had weapon triangle advantage over every other magic type and featured new but powerful spells. Nosferatu and Aura made a reappearance, in addition to the lightweight lightning in the legendary book Naga. While Aura and Nosferatu were almost unusably heavy, lightning was considered the best basic spell in the game for the few units who could use it. Considering the player never got dark mages in Genealogy and the enemy never got light mages, it felt very thematic, with followers of Naga using light magic against Loptis's dark. Thracia kept light magic above all other types, but was limited to only lightning and Nosferatu, with Aura being unused in the game and Naga not existing. Homer, Lenone, Sarah, and Sias were the only users of light magic in the game, though for all of these, the lightning tome was often the best weapon, assuming you could get your hands on one. The GBA era. Binding Blade limited light magic to bishops and, oddly enough, Guinevere's unique Light Sage class. Stripping much of the power from the class, light magic was now beaten by anima in the magic triangle and had much weaker spells. Nosferatu went from light to dark for the first time in the series, leaving lightning, divine, purge, and aureola as the only light spells in the game. They were roughly the equivalent of anima spells of the same tier, just with lower accuracy. By requiring the promotion of Ellen or Sol, or waiting until Yoder to use it, it's no wonder why few players actually used light magic in FE6. FE7 introduced the Monk class, a dedicated light mage that would promote into the cleric's bishop line. Light magic was given a few extra spells to fill out its ranks in the form of Shine and Aura, the S-rank Luce, and Athos's Aureola. This was when light formed its identity as the low might, medium weight, crit-focused spell type, being weaker and heavier than anima, but more accurate and not as heavy as dark. This low power and higher weight made light magic feel like the worst magic type though, as you often needed to rely on crits in order to get kills unless your units were particularly fast and strong. As for characters, Lucius, Sarah, Renault, and Athos could use light magic. In FE8, light magic was arguably at its absolute strongest. Not because of the spells themselves, they were still as bad as in FE7, but light magic was given a few major indirect buffs. First, the Bishop's Slayer skill meant that it had triple might against all monsters, the most common enemy types in the game. Second, sages had access to light magic, putting spells on units like Soleil, who had enough magic and speed to overcome the tome's low might and higher weight. Third, most enemy mages were monsters using dark magic, giving light magic by far the most opportunities to triangle advantage them, especially in the postgame. Slayer was by far the most impactful of all these changes, with the prospect of a 36 base might aura being even more powerful than the 34 might Ivaldi against monsters, leading to some truly impressive critical hits, even more so considering that Slayer gave 3x effectiveness while Ivaldi only had 2x, meaning that you were better off using aura than Ivaldi, if you were a bishop. Light also solved its optics issues by being on more units than ever before, depending on promotion path. Artur, Mulder, Natasha, La Rochelle, Lute, Ewan, and Soleil could all use light magic, an impressive spread of units with 3 potential bishops. The thing is though, the bigger pool of characters to use light magic was kind of fake. Sages could use light magic on promotion, but they didn't start with an impressive rank at all. D rank only afforded lightning and shine, but Evaldi is useful for sages, as it gives them another weapon alongside Excalibur to deal effective damage against monsters. Light magic still isn't good. Slayer made bishops really good.
Tellius. Path of Radiance drastically cut back on light magic, separating it from the magic triangle and limiting it only to bishops once again. In an interesting improvement over Binding Blade, the light magic rank for bishops was made equal to their staff rank, meaning no need to grind out basic light for forever to use other spells. But with only Reese capable of using light magic on the player's side, combined with the rarity, low power, and expensive light tomes, it was easy to forget about it entirely, despite Nosferatu being a light tome dropped by Oliver. Radiant Dawn did a lot to try to bring light magic to the forefront, perhaps most of all by having Micaiah, a light mage, be the main lord for Part 1 and sections of Part 3 and 4. The base tomes, Light and L-Light, were still lackluster, but Thani was perhaps one of the strongest rapier-type weapons in Fire Emblem ever made. Nosferatu was light magic again, and the late-game Valora was unique, albeit rather weak, for being the only accessible weapon to inflict the poison status.
Of the other available light magic users, Soniki could use it, but fire magic was generally better. Oliver, Laura, and Reese were all fairly lackluster, and the secret character was only available for the final chapter in a second playthrough.
And Micaiah was carried hard by Thani, but light magic was at the very least present throughout the game. The end of the magic triangle split from Shadow Dragon onward has left light magic relatively forgotten. While dark magic has been used as a type designation to limit what classes can use certain spells like Ruin, Waste, and Nosferatu in Awakening and Fates, light magic didn't see the same treatment.
A few spells like the Book of Naga in Awakening were given light-themed icons and animations, but that was about it.
The closest we've gotten since Radiant Dawn was when 3 houses featured 4 combat spells, Nosferatu, Aura, Abraxas, and Seraphim in the Faith spell list. However, Aura and Abraxas don't really have any unique classification. While Nosferatu remains the same as its HP steal, Seraphim does function as a unique Faith spell that has effectiveness against monsters. Engage, though, does very much the same, featuring only Fire, Wind, Thunder, and Surge as basic tome types and limiting the light spells to the emblem weapons. That said, these light spells have some interesting effects. Seraphim is effective against the Corrupted, Shine lights up Fog of War, Thani has crazy effective damage, and Nosferatu is draining life like it always has. But what does the future hold for light magic? If there is light at the end of the tunnel, for Fire Emblem's light magic, my guess is it's going to show up in the remakes. Genealogy, Thracia, the GBA games, and Tellius had magic triangles, and you need 3 corners to make a triangle, especially with how many important characters in Genealogy, Thracia, and Radiant Dawn specifically use it. My question is, though, is if they're going to flesh out these weapons even more, like how Echoes did with Gaiden by creating a ton of new weapons. But what about the new games? As I talked about in my video on the magic triangle, I just don't see the Trinity of Magic ever coming back, at least without significant overhauls. Making light a subtype of magic like how dark was handled in Awakening and Fates also feels weird, as you would end up with too many extra spells to fit into one list, or too few unique spells to consider making it worth creating an entire classification for them. And then there's the fate of Nosferatu to consider. Is it going to stay light magic, or is it going to go back to being dark magic? Who knows? It's very weird to consider life draining to be a light magic thing, but Fire Emblem is built different, I guess.
Seraphim and other Slayer spells in the series that do effective damage versus monsters will always be a smart idea for a light magic combat spell, but it's hard to justify creating a new list of combat spells with the label of light if they all are just the golden white versions of anima spells. The trouble to really distinguish dark and light from anima is what I would wager is a big reason why the triangle was scrapped anyway. If anything, light magic was basically repurposed as a general term for 3 houses' faith magic, which was mainly just healing and support spells. Like I mentioned, Seraphim and Nosferatu were the only truly unique combat faith spells. Creating unique and interesting spells for a set of classes can certainly be hard, but a lot of 3 houses' dark magic stood out compared to black magic already, making use of effective damage, range, and power to achieve that end. Future games could combine what they've already done in the past to make a combat spell list for light magic users worth it. While bolting is a series staple, so is Purge. Another unique property of long-range tomes is that they're uncounterable, so perhaps you could create a light magic tome that is uncounterable too. Brave Effect tomes are rare in the series. Lightning and Fates and Nova are brave weapons. There's a couple others, but you can have a unique spell in that list too. Perhaps all light combat magic can slightly heal on hit, or a certain tome could be equipped to heal on turn start, like how 3 houses' sacred weapons did it. Thani is incredibly strong and carried Micaiah due to its power and effectiveness on cavalry and armors. Dark Spikes in 3 houses was strong against cavalry, and Wind has always been effective against flying mounts. light magic could perhaps have an effective damage tome on armors, or heck, other magic users. Light magic was very strong on paper due to its weapon advantage against all types of magic in FE4, so even bringing back that in some form would make light magic relevant due to type advantage. I'm just repurposing things in the series that has already been done. My point with the above was to pretty much just say that there are ways to bring light combat magic back, which I think is the only way to bring a return of it worthwhile, because you can't really even say return to form in this case, because light magic is either quite niche or just outright bad in the series. I wouldn't get my hopes up though. It's not like the series really needs a magic type distinction at this point anyway, but it would be cool, and especially if it enriches the gameplay experience. So let me know your opinions and ideas on light magic in the comments down below, and how maybe you would iterate on it. And don't forget to leave a like to help this video get seen by more people. Thanks for watching. Deuces.
You